Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome to another lecture, a very important lecture. Today we are going to start. So dear students, I told you in the last semester that we are talking about practical teaching methodologies. This time in this course we are in the fourth semester and our approach is more practical, we are at the micro level of the teaching. In the last semester, we were talking about things at the macro level. And this time, you see, we are trying to see how to teach language and how to teach a foreign language at micro level. And I'll be giving you, in fact, instructions, of course, in the lectures to come on micro teaching as well. So if I recap the previous lecture, we were talking about what? Yes, stages of an oral lesson. This is the topic we started, and we are talking those stages. And if you remember, the last lecture was on which stage? Presentation stage. So let's review the previous lecture that we had. So my dear students, in the last lecture, what we did, that we talked about what are the different stages of an oral lesson, right? So in that stages, the first stage was which stage? Presentation stage. And even the name shows that what you do in this stage, you present that exponent of language or the language item, or in short, whatever you are going to teach, you present this stage. And this is a very important stage. This is the stage that reflects, that shows what is of course you are going to teach, what language item you are trying to transfer, in fact, to your the learners of that language. So these are, how many stages were there? Yes, we talk about presentation stage, and then you have the practice stage, and of course the production stage. So these are the stages we talked about, and then we see that what is presentation? You present that. I mean, a conditional sentence, if you're going to talk about a conditional sentence, or if you're going to talk about modal verbs, whatever your lesson plan is, in this stage you present. And how you present, yes, it depends. You can present that of course language item on the board, on the whiteboard, right? Or if you have the blackboard, so whatever, I mean, visual aid do you have, you can show that. Or if you are in a class where you have multimedia facility, so you show that slide to your students. So you have a PowerPoint slide. On that PowerPoint slide, what you do, you write the points and you show to the students, and you present. And this is important stage, because this here it is the ball is in the teacher's court, in fact. So what the teacher in fact tries his best to present things in the best possible way. And why the teacher tries hard, why the teacher is supposed to put efforts here. Why? Because this is the stage that in fact inculcates things to the students. And if there's a problem in the presentation stage, so ultimately students would be confused. And if I recap this with the first lecture that we had, the role of a teacher. So over there, the teacher, if teacher is confused, naturally the student would be confused. So that's why the presentation stage is very important stage, and here the teacher must be clear what to present, in fact, and again how to present, and while presenting what important aids we can use, realia we can use, so that presentation would be successful. So that's why, of course, I mean, when we teach foreign language to the students, and being teacher, of course, of this language, or being student of this course, we need to focus on presentation stage. We need to see how we can improve this stage, and you need to put efforts here, because these efforts definitely bring result. These efforts help the students practice well, and these efforts help the student produce well. So this stage in fact is a primary stage in an oral lesson, because other stages in fact depend on this presentation stage. And if there is a problem in the presentation stage, so naturally other stage would not be as per the expectations. So that's why we being the teachers of this language, we need to see of course what we can do to improve the quality of what presentation stage or the efficiency of presentation stage. So what is the purpose of the presentation stage? Of course, to see that whatever you are going to teach, what is the purpose of that language item that you are going to teach, or that what is the need of that. Fine, it means that what you teach should be relevant, and secondly, student need those things. So that's of course the purpose of the presentation stage, that it should not be purposeless. Fine. Whatever, I mean, when you teach a language item to the students, or you present a language item, right, I mean, a research is required behind this, that this is really important and student need it. And then what is the procedure of presentation stage? I hope you remember that first you build what? You build that context. You see, you build that context, of course, and because situation is important. You know, the language, the teaching does demand situation, and if you teach in a specific situation, that teaching would be useful, and the student would understand things well. So what we do, that we build situation, and then we focus on, and then we seek the attention of the students, and of course then we communicate that of course sentence, or that lesson that you are going to teach. So these are the things that we talked about in the last lecture, that you see what is a presentation, and of course what is the purpose of the presentation stage, and then what is the procedure of presentation stage. So today we are going to move on today's stage, that is practice stage. So students, even the name shows what is practice stage. Well, students, so the practice stage, again, the name shows in fact that this is the stage where students, what they do, they practice in a controlled environment, right? Students, you all know that the practice is very important for learning a language, and of course even because we know that of course language learning of course requires your needs us to practice all the skills. So since we have to practice skills, and that's why in a practice stage, what happens is that the teacher in fact, you see, makes student the practice in a controlled environment. So this is really important, because once the student practice that language item that has been presented in the first stage, so definitely they would be more confident, and their learning would be definitely meaningful learning. So that's why this stage is important. Unless student the practice that of course the phase that the item which is given in the presentation stage, so I mean student would not be able to learn language well. So the practice stage is very important. So this practice stage, what in fact gives opportunity to students to use that newly presented language in a controlled environment, right? For example, the teacher is of course in the presentation stage, the teacher talked about modal verbs. So in the presentation stage, where we saw that the teacher talks about presentation stage, maybe he gives handouts, maybe he in fact uses a whiteboard to talk about models. But once in the practice stage, what happens, that students are supposed to practice in fact, and they make sentences, right? Here mean in the practice stage, teacher may be the part of that of course say a stage. The teacher may ask question to the students and they reply, and or maybe it could be a pair work or a group work, where the teacher in fact keeps on visiting all the groups or all the pairs. I mean they are working on the language item, that has been presented. So this is what an opportunity, a chance for the students to practice, and we know that practice makes, of course, a learner better. So the more a learner the practices, the more he would learn. So practice stage is very important, and because once you practice, of course, in an environment where there is a person, where there is a teacher, and he, of course, is there to correct you, he is there to help you out. So in this stage, of course, when you practice in presence of your coach, when you practice in presence of your mentor, or when you practice in front of your teacher, and particularly the language, the teacher, of course, and you practice, and if you practice well, that it's an encouragement for the teacher that whatever he presented, you absorbed it and now you practice it. And of course, when you practice, it gives you confidence that being a learner of a language, there you see whatever the teacher presented, now you are able to present it. So this is a stage which in fact helps the teacher, in fact motivates the teacher that he presented things well. And again, when being a student of a foreign language, when they practice in a controlled environment, and that environment gives them confidence, and they can use that stage, they can use that word, they can use that vocabulary item, they can use that sentence structure in different situations, because that practice, of course, gives him confidence. If a student practices, for example, say that if he practices, of course, on his own, if there is nobody there to monitor him, to see him, so that practice may not be that much valuable, because that is the personal practice of the students. But when the students practice, in fact, in a group, of course, in the presence of the teacher of that language, so obviously they gain the confidence, and they feel that they can use that language in the market, they can use that language in different situations. So that's important. Again, in the practice stage, my dear students, what happens is that when the student practice, it helps them to know forms of language, in fact, you see, and they in fact try to assimilate, and I'll try to memorize, of course. They learn that expression, of course, and you see, once they practice, so this practice helps students to learn, right, to memorize that sentence or that form. And if you see, traditionally this stage, in fact, of the lesson was dominated by teacher-led drills. Right. So in the practice stage, of course, if you go back, but now we see that, you see, the teacher becomes part of the class, and of course the teacher helps the students out. But if you go back, traditionally, of course, the practice stage was that once the teacher, in fact, leads the students, and we used to call it teacher-led drills. Right. So that was a traditional definition of the stage, where the teacher leads the drills and the student, in fact, follow. But now recently, of course, it has come to include some interactive communicative activities between students on the ground, that the student interaction provides greater and more authentic practice for each student and the communicative activities. Now things have changed now, because we talked about in the last semester that, you see, CLT, communicative language teaching, of course, is a modern approach, and where we see that both the learner and the teacher must interact, and this interaction really helps them, of course, in learning a foreign language. So that's why, of course, even these practice stages there, and we bring communication in the practice stage. So communicative language teaching, of course, now is in this stage, that is what the practice stage. So that's, student, of course, what happens in this stage, that you see, you give a new language item, and you help the student to practice that in a controlled environment, where the teacher is there to play his part. The teacher is there to in fact correct if there is a mistake, considering the situation and time. And again, of course, in the past we talked about that it was a traditional way that the teacher of course used to help students. In fact, the teacher led, in fact, drills, and now things have changed, and now more communication is there for this stage as well. Now, what are the features of practice stage work? Of course, that's we saw what is practice stage and what are the different features, what are the characteristics of this stage. So, first of all, in fact, you need to know that the difference between a drill and an activity. So, dear students, of course, the drill is that, of course, when the teacher is authority, teacher helps in the student to perform certain drills, right? So that's why, of course, a drill is what is paced, cued and conducted by the teacher, with the class responding either individually or chorally, in fact. So that's why, of course, the teacher, when the teacher feels that the students, in fact, the students are unable to pronounce a word, so what the teacher does, you see, he pronounces that word, right? For example, teacher says pronunciation, 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 and everybody, in fact, replies, everybody follows the teacher, pronunciation, 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 right? Aristocracy, aristocracy, fine? So these are the words, Pakistan, you see. So, I mean, you must work hard, you must work hard, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. What is it? So the teacher, in fact, uses this, of course, sentence, right? And then please close the door, please close the door, and students, in fact, follow it. So this is what we call it, the drill. When the teacher leads the drill, in fact, the teacher gives cues, that the teacher, in fact, directs. So that is, in fact, paced and cued and conducted by the teacher. Whereas the activity is, in fact, of course, what is activity? It is paced and controlled more by the students themselves. In fact, activity is going on, right? It can be in a pair work, it can be in a group work, of course. So where students talk to one another and they work, in fact, they can help from others, in fact. So this is what activity. For example, you give talking about jigsaw, in fact, right? Or a puzzle is given to the students and they work together and they try to find solution to that. Or jumbled sentences are given to students and students are asked in a group to put those jumbled sentences in order. So what is it? This is an activity. The teacher has given those jumbled sentences to the students and teacher directs them to put these jumbled sentences in order. Or the teacher gives them different pieces of a picture and the student, he asks the students to put this picture fine in a proper shape. So what does it again this is what we call it that, well, it's an activity which is performed more by the students. Yes, teacher's directions are there. It doesn't mean that teacher, of course, does not give any the directions. Teacher does give directions, but the student perform those activities. Or, for example, the daily, wall clocks are given, and then the daily routine is given. The students are asked to match, in fact, your activities, your daily routine with the time. So this is what we call it an activity, my dear students. So that is the difference between a drill and an activity. So overall, what the drill times have been, of course, and you see, when we talk about that, some people they criticize these drills, in fact, and what happens that, you see, especially for the lack of genuine communication, because people say that in drills there is no creativity, in fact, because the teacher makes students learn, right, a vocabulary item. A teacher makes students learn a sentence structure. So we cannot find that, well, language is inherent, and for a different situation, of course, different language sentences are required. So that's why some people, they are against this the drills, and they call it that drills are what? Parrot learning, right? So again, it's a debatable thing. Then, of course, there are experts who feel that, well, when the students, in fact, perform drills in the class, so chorally when they perform certain drills, so it gives them what? Confidence, and they can perform well individually as well. Some students shy, of course, individually they cannot express themselves for many reasons. Some students have some psychological reason, but in our drills they all try. Of course, they know that it's a class activity, and nobody in a choral drill, nobody judges everybody, in fact, tries to communicate. So that's why this choral drills give more confidence to the students. So that is one mean, there may be a criticism on this. So we need to know the distinction between what? Again, mechanical and meaningful drills. Important drills, I talked about that, of course. The drills is really effective because students perform drills and the teacher helps them out. So when talking about the drills, there can be mechanical drills and there can be meaningful drills. So a mechanical drill what focuses on the form of the new language by getting students to repeat. It's a mechanics, in fact. Right? You mustn't work hard. You mustn't go there. You need not do it. Is that clear? You have to, right? You had better work hard. You had better work hard. So what is it? A mechanics, right? So because, I mean, the use of modal verbs, right? Or in fact, she works hard. She works hard. Why does she work hard? Right? He did not go there. He did not go there. So what are these? These are what mechanical drills where the teacher is in fact trying to inculcate this, that the form that after the past participle, of course, and the negative sentences of past tense, we use the base form. So this is mechanic. And second is, of course, we call it that as meaningful drills. So what is meaningful drill? Here mean the students are in fact expected to know the situation, and then they are allowed to give the different answers to a different situations. So that what is called meaningful drill, where the drills are there, but students in fact are expected to listen this sentence, and they are allowed to reply in different ways. The reply can be more than one. Fine. But in mechanical, of course, drills, we have seen that, well, there is one pattern which is given by the teacher, and the students are expected to follow that. In meaningful drills, my dear students, yes, I mean, situations are given, and students are allowed. They are not given one fixed pattern, right, to say thank or to appreciate. Here means students are given a situation, and what they do, they give answers as per their understanding, and they give variety of answers. This is what we do. So that's we call it meaningful drill. Here's an example, my dear students. Well, the man is swimming, right? The teacher says the man is swimming, and the students, the man is swimming, right? And then what? Teacher says running. Now the man is running. Teacher limping. See, you must have seen that, well, my dear students, here, well, the teacher only says running. In first sentence, the teacher says the man is running. The student says, right, the man is swimming. Fine. And then the teacher does not say that the man, of course, the man is running. Teacher says running, and the student says the man is running. And then, of course, limping, the man is limping. Then trolling, of course, and the man is trolling. So in this way, the words, I mean, limp and troll are the words which need to be inculcated through this drill. So mechanical drills give students an opportunity to memorize form of the language. So that is what mean mechanical drills are there. And you see, mechanical drills require what? Students to understand what the cues they hear. Now the next is, my dear student, meaningful what drills. What are meaningful drills? Yes, they need students to understand the cues they hear, right? So if I say stand up, so the students, maybe I would say first time stand up, then I say sit down, and student says sit down. If I say yes, student say move on, right? Stop. Is that clear? So these are what the meaningful, because they give students meaning-based choices, right, as to what they reply, as in the following example is there. I have got a headache, right? See, it's a meaningful drill. You should take Panadol. Clear, students? Well, students, so meaningful drills, my dear students, they in fact give students meaning, right? And students try to understand, right? Understand the concept, and then they try to reply, like we see in the example, I have got a headache, right? Now the teacher says I'm not well, and the student says you need to see the doctor, right? Like here in the dialogue you can see you should lie down, right? Or you should go for a walk. Clear? Or if I say I have a headache, yes, you need to take an aspirin, right? Or you better sleep. Clear? So, or you take rest, or you drink more water. Fine. So these are something that, of course, what you see, it's a meaningful drills, that they are meaningful because they give students meaning based choice as to what reply is in the following. See, and then example, I am starving. Yes, you should eat something, right? Or you should have a meal. You should think of something else. I am so hot, right? So here student can say you should have a drink, right? Or you should take your sweater off, or you should open the window. So in this drill, each student may respond in more than one way, provided the answer is appropriate to the teacher's cue sentences. I hope you understand. So dear students, of course, you need to know that what are the mechanical drills and what are the meaningful drills. In mechanical drills, of course, the form is on what? That is, focuses on the form. Like if you see, here is a mechanics. For example, like in every sentence, you see the, of course, subject, be form and ing. The man is swimming, right? The man is running. The man is limping. The man is strolling. Clear? So this is what mean a mechanical drill, where mechanics are taught. You must work hard, you must do it, you must sleep early. See, must plus base form, must plus base form. So you could do it, you could answer my question. So this is what, my dear students, is mechanical drills. And second, of course, what we call it, meaningful drills, where students respond to the cue of a sentence, and they respond, right, in variety of ways, of course. And like we see the example, if I say that it's 1:30, so student can say, yes, you need to of course you need to leave for your home, or you need to take rest, or what you can do, you need to phone your call your brother to come and pick you, right? So in this way, this is what we call it meaningful drills. Now you have to decide that which drill is better, either the meaningful drills or what, mechanical drill, because generally if you see that the meaningful drills in fact help students practice more, help students learn more. So meaningful drills are better in this stage. Which stage we're talking about? Practice stage. Yes, students? So you must know the difference between a mechanical drill and a meaningful drill. I gave you examples. I hope you have understood. Fine, students. So students, these are of course we are talking about the features of practice stage, and we saw that what are the different drills, and we try to cover mechanical drills and meaningful drills. Here is of course like another example to practice what? Comparative of short and long adjectives. So teacher-led drills. Teacher, more expensive, and the students, a bus is more expensive than a bike. See, we are what? Here we are practicing how to use what? Comparative degrees, in fact. Fine. And then similarly, faster, the train is faster than a bike. Then of course teacher says more interesting, the cinema is more interesting than TV. Healthier, oranges are healthier than ice cream. More tiring, a bike is more tiring than a bus. So again, it's what here that the teacher-led drills are there. The teacher wants to inculcate which degrees? Comparative degrees, and the student make sentences. The teacher use that. For example, the teacher uses faster, and the students say that, for example, the car is faster than the bus, or train is faster than a bus. Is that clear? So this is what you see, we call them the drills, that are teacher-led drills are there. Another, of course, dirtier. You can see that, student, a city is dirtier than the seaside. So example 2, to practice, I would rather plus infinitive without to pair work, student. So my dear student, again, if you see the example, earlier we talked about what? The use of would rather, right? Would rather plus I mean, bare infinitive. I would rather do it. I would rather stay here than go outside, right? I would rather write than speak. So that is example we saw earlier. So over there mean maybe that, see, if you see on the slide that pair work of student is, I mean, finding out your partner's preferences. Student 1, I would rather eat ice cream than oranges, right? So other day, I mean, in the previous example we saw that oranges are more healthier than ice cream, and then the student says, I would rather eat ice cream than oranges, right? And then student 2, me too, I would rather read a book than go to cinema. Or really, I would rather go to the cinema. What about traveling? Well, I would rather travel by bus than by train, etc. Clear? So these are some, of course, activities are there, examples are there that you see would help us, in fact, how drills can be managed in the class, and what are teacher-led drills, and of course what are mechanical drills, and again what are meaningful drills are there. See, there are of course examples, right? And mind you, of course, what happens, we're talking about the features of the practice stage. So again, communicative exchanges. If you see these examples that we have just talked about, where the teacher says that I have headache, and the teacher and the students reply, you need to see the doctor, you should take rest, or you should take aspirin. And second, of course, drills of what? Teacher-led drills of comparative degrees. Faster, and the student says that train is faster than the bus. So, and then use of would rather. I would rather travel by train, right, than a bus. Why? Because train is faster than the bus. Is that clear? So preferences are asked, and the one student says that I would rather eat ice cream than, right, than of course oranges. I hope you understand. So these are what mean. If you see these examples, you will come to know that, well, there is communicative exchanges are there. There is communication, right? And of course the students are improving the language, and they are practicing their language, in fact, and they practice the use of what? Comparative degrees, and of course it was teacher-led drills. And of course sometimes the teacher just gives them a cue, and the student respond, in fact. And of course these three activities are linked, right? First, simple, in fact, the use of comparative, and then of course using that we talked about preferences, and we used would rather, a modal verb, right? So there is, definitely exchange, of course, and we call it communicative exchanges between the students. And these exchanges, my dear students, really improve language of the students, right? And once they communicate, the first thing is that students students like that class, and they enjoy taking that class, right? And they feel motivated that they are really learning something, right? And they don't get bored in such a situation where there is communication between the students, and the teacher also, in fact, helps them out. And then they practice what? Real language. That is language that they need. Find that is language that of course they may use in day-to-day conversation. So that's why what they do, they practice real language. And again, one thing more, that unpredictable sentences, right? Whenever there is a situation, student gives various sentences, like we saw that students gave 5 replies to I have a headache, right? And even if there are 40 students in the class, people may have variety of responses. So definitely once students respond differently, so their learning is, in fact, enhances, because maybe there are 30 students in the class, and of course, and 30 replies, and everybody replies. If the teacher makes reply everybody, so definitely 30 reply could come, or maybe there would 15 new replies could come, because sometimes there is repetition in the class, right? So, and then that is again that is a real language. Second, unpredictable sentences can come. You never know what would be the reply of a student? It depends, in fact. Maybe if there is a student whose father is a doctor, and he would say, you should take, in fact, steam, for example, or you should take you should take a Panadol, or you should take another medicine, right? So it depends. Or if in fact the student is there and whose father is a teacher, so he would in fact reply in different way. So that's why, I mean, students' bent of mind, their understanding varies, and they reply accordingly. Is that clear, students? Yes. So that's why, when you have these drills in the class, and when you make students practice in the class using either mechanical drills, or you are using meaningful drills, students exchange language, they learn language, they really practice language, and above all, they feel motivated. They feel that, well, whatever was presented, it is a time to practice that. And of course, this practice in itself helps them. So this practice, my dear students, really helps students, in fact, and they once they come to the production stage, they produce well. And again, quick responses, because in a language class, and in a language, while teaching a language and while learning a language, yeah, we need to be good at asking questions and responding. At times, we are unable to respond, right? So that's why we need to think of appropriate responses, and this practice stage helps student, in fact, respond well, because if there's a class of 15 students and one question is raised, and if only one student replied, then others may not have that response. So that's why you need to give chance to everybody to respond, and of course, whatever the response comes, you should listen to it. Fine, responses can vary. In fact, sometimes you get a response that may not be appropriate, and somehow the teacher can correct that. Teacher can help the student out. Right? For example, of course, what to do at night, and of course some students say, well, you should, watch the movie the whole night. Yes, possible, in fact, but at times you should say, well, if you watch the movie the whole night, what would you do the next day? Right? So it depends, in fact. You see that, of course, sometime you see, what today, what is the plan for iftar? Right? So maybe the reply would, I am not fasting. So again, here you can correct the student, right? So therefore, the quick responses can come, or it's today I'm fasting for the first time and I am enjoying the fasting. So that's why responses can be quick and responses can be innovative. New responses can come. So this is what the practice stage talks about, that there is choices. Students, in fact, think and reply in a different way. Their choices are different. Their responses may be quick. Fine. And then unpredictable sentences. Sometimes you see you never predict, but a sentence comes, and of course that is the language, real language. And then relevance to the answers, right, students? Yeah. So whatever, the question is raised and relevance. For example, if I say I have a headache, so if the response comes, you need to see heart specialist. So again, this is not a relevance reply, right? Or for example, if I say that I need to go to a market, and the reply comes, yes, you should get an air ticket. So this is not a relevance reply. So when the reply comes, yes, for example, I have a headache, yes, you need to take a cup of coffee. It's a relevant reply. Or you need to take an aspirin. It's a relevant reply, right? Or I'm tired, right? And if the reply comes, you need to work more. So here this reply may not be relevant, but if you say, okay, I'm tired, yes, you need to take rest. Fine, you should sleep for a while and then you'll be fresh, or you need to take bath. Clear? So that's why these are what communicative exchanges they are in this practice stage. So they are drills. So why these drills make student practice, right? And they practice, of course. While they practice, they try to be relevant, and they choose different language items, in fact, and that choice again determines the thinking of the student, that which background do they have, right? And then they in fact respond accordingly. So that's why in this practice stage all these things of course take place. All right, so these are what talking about the features of practice stage. And there is controlling language at the practice stage. Like we we saw of course initially that, well, in drills and the difference between a drill and an activity, and you saw that a drill, what happens in a drill, that the teacher leads that drill. Fine. In activity, we saw that, of course, students perform that activity on their own. So controlling language, of course, that's why the teacher may wonder how pair work, group work can be sufficiently controlled to provide group students with relatively mistakes-free practice. Well, students, so definitely in the practice stage, what we do that we try to, in fact, the teachers have a control over the practice that is going on. So we were talking about that how the teacher can have this in fact an environment to help students in a pair work or in a group work to practice language in a congenial environment, in a tension-free environment, and particularly, of course, the mistake-free practice. Because naturally you feel that it looks difficult for a teacher that you see where there is a pair work going on or group activities going on, how the teacher would control that, and how would he monitor that, you see, the practice which should be mistake-free practice. So we have some ways to see it. Let's see what are the way. So here is, for example, there is a model on the backboard. Can we do that? Would you like to dash, see, plus time and place. Would you like to visit me at 5, right? And say in Margala Hotel, right? So this is what. Or would you like to visit? Would you like to come to my home, right, at 6 p.m. tonight, right? So, or at 9 p.m. tonight. See, on your whiteboard, you can use this example. Refuse. I'm sorry. I'm afraid I can't. Right? So on the board or on the slide, if you have this dialogue, if you have these sentences, so you feel that, you see, then you expect that the students would practice in their groups, and they can refer back to the board or the slides, and that, you see, that can of course act as a model for the students. Right? So that really helps teachers to have a mistake-free practice stage frame of the language item which has been taught. Or invite again. Could you come tomorrow evening instead? If you refuse, for example, if you invite me to come to you, tomorrow or in the evening this day. So if I'm busy, so I'm sorry, I'm afraid I can't. I'm busy somewhere, and give reason. I have to take my. Of course, I have to go somewhere. I'm already invited by somebody else. So these are what you can give reason why you are refusing it, and then yes, you can invite again. Please come next weekend. Or please come next tomorrow. See, so hear me, yes, thanks very much, that would be nice. So in this way, you see, once the students have this invitation and refusal, and of course inviting against and the answer, so that would in fact help the teachers to see this practice stage in of course a professional way. So students may be given a handout of a page, yes, possible, or showing the 7 days of the week. They may be asked to fill in the 4 days of which they are busy. So this one, this is the dialogue on the board the teacher can give, or another handout can be given where you see the complete 7 days are there, and then student may be asked that what do they do on specific day, and what is their routine on schedule on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, right? And this way, of course, the student in a group, they can exchange their scheduling. For example, Ali has a different schedule on Monday, and Zishan has a different schedule on Monday. So they can exchange, in fact, and they can ask about each other's model. Similarly, Uzma has a different schedule on Friday, and Anita has a different schedule on Sunday. Why? Because Anita is Christian and Uzma is Muslim. So of course, Anita is more busy, in fact, on Sunday, and Uzma and Anita, they are busy on Friday. So again, this is a solution to the problem that how can the teacher have a mistake-free practice in a group or in a pair work. So this can help you, in fact. Now, what is the procedure of practice stage? It's really important, right? So at this stage, teacher, in fact, controls the task for the students, right? Why? Because the teacher's control, teacher's power is important, because teacher tries to have students, practice in a of course in an environment where mistakes, in fact, of the students should be minimized, and because this is the time that the teacher can help them out, right? And the teacher can correct them if there is any problem. So that's why controlling language is a must. And what can we do? We have just talked about that. You see, you can give them a model, you can give them a handout, and you can be on the teacher needs to be on his toes when the practice stage is underway. So he, of course, the teacher also, he also tries to make it purposeful for the students. So students, so in the practice stage, what happens? In fact, what is the procedure of the practice stage, my dear students? So here, the teacher, in fact, of course, very important, and what he does, that you see, he controls the task for the students, because the teacher's authority, the teacher's power, that he helps the students out wherever he finds that the students are struggling. So in this way, this is a direct favor to the learners, right? If they realize it, it's a favor to the learners, because it is, an indirect help to the students. And then teacher also tries to make it purposeful for the students, right? Because there's mistake-free environment, and the teacher, in fact, cares for the students, and teacher monitors them. You see that what is going on there, of course, whatever the language item the teacher has talked about, a teacher has presented, and of course the teacher is making students practice them. You see, so that practice stage, of course, helps students learn, helps students use that language. Of course, when they practice with one another, they practice in a group, they practice in a of course in a pair, or they even sometimes they practice with the teacher. So this is what it is a purpose. So it has a purpose behind. I told you earlier that this practice, in fact, motivates the learners, and this practice helps them use this language item, of course, of the class, because this practice, the student feel that it is under a control of an authority, and the teacher is there, and then once they speak that expression of the class with others, with strangers, so they naturally become confident that they consider that they had practiced this expression, they had practiced this word in the class, and of course if they use it, and obviously listeners would understand, and they would not in fact be confused. So therefore this practice stage is really useful for the learners, is important. And the most important point is what order to carry out, right? What is the order? The order follows from the presentation stage work to the other stages. That's naturally, of course, first you present and then you practice, right? Presentation, of course, when the ball is in the court of the teacher, when the teacher tries his best to present in the best way, in the best possible way, and of course for this, to make this presentation effective, he uses realia, he uses visual aids, he uses body language, he uses his para-language, whatever he could do, the teacher does it, because presentation stage is really important. A good presentation stage, it helps the teacher in the practice stage, helps the students in the in fact definitely production stage. So presentation stage, in fact, prepares the students for the other stages. If there is a flaw in the presentation stage, so other stages might be faulty, but if the presentation is excellent, so other stages would definitely be useful. So that's why presentation stage is a primary stage. It is linked with the other, because this is a foundation stage, presentation stage. A good building can be constructed on a strong foundation, but if the foundation is weak, so obviously, building cannot be long lasting. So therefore students, that once the stages will present, and then it comes to practice, and again practice is very important, because practice in fact assimilates. Practice of course makes the learners better, and practice in fact gives students the confidence. Practice students in fact to know that expression, fine, they can practice with this with other students, and of course and once they practice, definitely they make new sentences. They in fact if it is a meaningful drill, so obviously students give variety of expression. They choose language for it, fine, and what they do, that they try to be relevant, right? And in the practice stage, of course, they think of how to question and how to answer, and they think of course, a situational based language as well. So practice stage, again, it's very important. Practice stage is, of course, I would say, the useful, of course, for the learners, and again for the teacher, because it teaches the teacher's efforts that students are able to practice. And even the teacher's role, of course, is there. Again, it's active in the presentation stage, of course it's active, but in the practice stage we cannot say that teacher role is over. Again, when the students the practice, the teacher remains on his toes, and he visits each and every group, and he says that what goes on in that group, and wherever there is a problem, the teacher in fact intervenes. And of course, we discussed that it is not easy to have a command and control on, of course, on the practice stage for a teacher. So we talked about that a model can be given, and students are expected to follow that. So their shift changes from the teacher to student. In fact, yes, in this present practice stage, very right, that there is a shift and it moves. Because in the presentation stage, teachers, of course, role was more important than the others one. But again, in a communication, of course, process, yes, both the communicator and the communicant are important. So is the case here in the presentation stage. The teacher's role was more important than the practice stage. In the practice stage, again, now it is the students who have to practice, and again, the teacher is there to help them out. Without teachers' control, without teachers' intervention, without teachers, in fact, help, even students cannot practice. So that's why for the practice stage, again, teacher is an important entity. So dear students, this is what we call the practice stage. Of course, a very important stage. If you want to learn a language, and if you're being a student of TEFL, if you want to help students learn that language item, learn that sentence, of course, or that if you want to help the students in of course, knowing the difference between a connotation and a denotation. So the practice stage is important, because the practice stage, what it does, that is, it is simple, that of course when if you go back to learner driver analogy, that the driver cannot be a driver unless he practices that, unless he drives. And of course, a learner driver cannot drive unless there is an instructor there. So that's why he sits beside him, and of course sits on the passenger seat, and of course the driver drives. And then whenever there is a problem, that instructor tells him that this is the mistake and improve it, move right, move left, see the mirror, fine, and of course how to overtake and where not to overtake and where to overtake, fine, and what should be the speed limit, and see the road signs. So everything is there, right? So once the learner in fact listens to the instruction, so and then he practices, so he gets used to, right? So that's why in the practice stage, what happens, my dear student, that students, you should be helped to apply the new language to interesting and relevant situations that illustrate his what form, meaning, and usefulness, right? What is the form? Fine. Which word you are going to teach or you have taught, right? And which word they have practiced, fine. And what does it mean? Its meaning, and of course why it is useful, right? So therefore, of course, in the practice stage, you practice what? You practice not only the form, mean the morphology, you also practice semantics, its meaning, and you also practice its pragmatics, its usefulness, or its what? Relevance, right? And this takes place in a controlled but interesting condition that include aspects of real communication. I mean, yes, it is under a control because teacher is there, but again, in an interesting way, there can be drills, there can be different activities, fine. So that really help learners to practice not only the form but also the this meaning, and also what we call it usefulness. So my dear students, practice stage is really important, and if the teacher, right, of the language makes students practice more, of course they would enjoy, and the class would be lively class, right? If there's no practice in the class and the teacher, skips the stage for some reasons, and of course that things may not be practical, and then that would be what a bookish teaching would be there. We would not call that teaching language teaching, because language, of course, teaching, in fact, you teach skills, and when you teach skills, you need to help students practice, and if they practice, definitely they improve. Clear, students? All right, so this was what practice stage. Now, before ending this lecture, let's conclude, in fact, I'll give you a summary of that, the practice stage again. My dear students, a very important stage out of these stages. So we talk about after presentation stage, this is the next stage, that is the practice stage. So what is the rationale behind this practice stage? Of course, giving students an opportunity to use the newly constructed language in a controlled framework, right? And again, the learner-driver analogy, the teacher, the instructor sits on a passenger seat, and that learner drives, in fact. And if you go back, traditionally it was just a teacher-led drills, but now, of course, we are in the modern age where we say it is more of a communicative nature. The teacher communicates with the students communicate with the teacher. Students communicate in their groups, so communication is there. While communicating, what they practice. And then we saw the difference between a drill and activity, and we saw that while drill is more of a teacher, and that in a drill, the teacher gives cues, and teacher, in fact, what does? He conducts, and teacher is authority, and drill is successful. Whereas in an activity, what happens that the students, they perform that activity, of course, on their own. I gave you examples that in activities, of course, maybe students are given a topic and they speak for and against in a group, fine. Or they are given a picture and they put that picture in order, or they are given jumbled sentences, and what they do, they put those sentences in order, in fact. And then there, of course, drills are there, and drills can be meaningful drills and they can be mechanical drills, my dear students. In meaningful drills, what happens? Yes, of course, that students, in fact, considers cues and then they reply in a different way. Whereas in mechanical drills, what happens? Yes, in mechanical drills, one form is, in fact, practiced by the students, right? And in a choral way, of course. Most focus on one form of the language item. For example, you are of course going to teach. For example, you teach ing form. I am going to help you out. So students practice that. Then, of course, practice stage procedure. What is that? See, we talk about that. You see, teacher controls the task for the students, and of course, teacher makes it purposeful for the students. And of course, most important point is that what order to carry out. So presentation stage come first, and then what we practice. And in the practice stage, I told you that there is a shift. The paradigm shifts from teacher to student, because in the practice the teacher is important, in the presentation the teacher is important, and in the practice stage, of course, the student role is more active than the teacher. And teacher is there, of course, but he is there to help wherever the students struggle. So dear students, this is what, in fact, the stage, we call it the practice stage, my dear students. Language teaching, of course, it's really in fact important, of course, and the language teaching is different from other teachings, because we teach skills, and of course for teaching these skills we need to give practice to our students, in fact, and that's why the practice stage is very important. And the good points for the practice stage is that the practice stage, in fact, relaxes. When the practice stage begins, students get relaxed, right? And they in fact, there's no pressure on them, of course, and when there's no pressure on them, so obviously learning enhances, learning improves if there's no pressure. And then the student feel that there is somebody in the class who is there to correct them out, so they accept that correctance, you see, they accept that correction which is done by of course, the instructor, the teacher of that skill. So once they correct, of course, and they practice that correction, fine. So obviously, of course, once they go out for the production stage, they can easily produce. So practice stage, in fact, it's a very important stage in the language learning, the process. Why it is important? Because the students, in fact, the receivers, they in fact they take the charge, and they help the teacher, in fact, of course, you see, by responding, fine. And whatever the drill is, a mechanical drill or it's a meaningful drill, so students, what they do, they in fact they work on it, in fact, and if the students have any problems, so the problem can be addressed there and then. For example, if the student is unable to pronounce some words, so in the practice stage, that pronunciation can be corrected. Or if the student has some, dialectical problem, so over there that can be addressed. Or if the student has some accent problem, you see, sometimes your articulators may not help you. So these things can be addressed and can be helped out in the practice stage, because it's a time that the teacher, in fact, of course, moves the shift, in fact, transfer the control to the students, and where he feels that whatever the language item he presented, the students are expected to practice this. So once you teach language, my dear students, whatever skill you teach listening skill, or you teach reading skill or writing skill, so practice stage is important, right? Once we'll move on, and we'll see in a lesson plan, you will find out that this is how we can practice. Like here we talked about that, drills can be there, activities can be there, of course, and mechanical drills can be there, or meaningful drills can be there. So it depends. Again, why, of course, this is practice stage. Now you see that how can you incorporate this stage in your language teaching, and when you teach language, do you use this practice stage? If yes, how you use this stage, right? Does it work, right? And if you feel it works, then of course it's a useful thing. And maybe you feel that it doesn't work, but generally, of course, when you teach language, and of course we follow these stages, right? That is the presentation stage and the practice stage. So with this, students, it's time to say goodbye. See you in the next lecture. It's Allah Hafiz.